Welcome to the Confidence Through Health podcast. My name is Jerry Snyder. As a health, wellness, and sports performance coach, my goal each week is to bring you experts to help you take control of your health and build your self-confidence. Thanks for including me today on your journey to better health. I want to say thank you to Social Media Cowboys for sponsoring this week's episode of the Confidence Through Health podcast. If you need help with a website, if you need social media needs for your business, if you need help with AdWords, SEO, all those things that you know you should be doing, but you are too busy to do or you're too confused about, they are the experts that you need in your corner. If you're interested in launching a podcast, such as mine, they help me edit my podcast and do a fantastic job making sure that all of the technical side of it is handled and we launch a nice, neat, edited podcast episode each week. So I want to thank Social Media Cowboys for their continued sponsorship of the Confidence Through Health podcast. You can find them at socialmediacowboys.com, or you can find them as well with other sponsors at confidencethroughhealth.com. So Stephen, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Confidence Through Health podcast.
It's an awesome opportunity. I'm so glad to meet you and always excited to share this message on bone density and how to restore it.
Well, and there's so many different things that we can talk about that I want to talk about, and that, like, because you've got experience in so many things. But I actually have a client that I started working with. She's in her late 60s, and she came to me off a doctor's recommendation but before she came to me, she tried one of the GLP-1s and then came back with pre-osteoporosis. Right?
Osteopenia, yeah.
Yeah, osteopenia. And she was like, whoa, I don't want to do that. And then she looked it up and she was like, okay, well, this is one of the side effects of the drug that she was taking.
Wow.
And so she's like, how do I get my bone density back? And that's like the first question she asked me. She's like, I don't know about anything else you do, but like, can you help me with that? And I said, well, yeah, there's a lot of pieces to it, but we've got to get strength going because that's a big piece of the puzzle, right? Building muscle strength and having then the right diet to go along with that, correct?
Yeah. And according to Dr. Jerry Tennant, the muscles act as the battery packs to donate electrons to the rest of the body. Mm-hmm. And it's basically whether or not ill health is always a manifestation of a deficiency of the cell membrane charge. The cell membrane is supposed to be minus 25 millivolts to be healthy. And because of lack of good essential fatty acids and a lot of things like cavitations or jawbone infections or and different things that shut off the circuitry from the teeth to the rest of the organ systems, root canals, all that, it basically, you got to restore that energy, and battery, having enough muscle mass can make a big difference in how much more quickly you can recover.
Right. And it's not, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not the old just throw calcium at it.
Yeah, not at all. In fact, the calcium recommendations, I mean, the fact that Dr. Levy, what's his first name? I'm not remembering. He wrote a book called Death by Calcium. Mm-hmm. And so because people don't understand the complexities of this part of the human physiology with regards to calcium, and they've indiscriminately supplemented with protein-bound calcium, inorganic forms of calcium to try and compensate for their loss of bone mass. And then they end up not reversing bone loss and contributing calcification of the soft tissues, the arteries, the heart valves, the brain, whatever. And so they end up, worse off. And then it's blamed on calcium, not understanding there's different kinds of calcium and the kind of calcium that the body specifically requires. And so, that's where I come in, because I learned this a while back, and it helped me recover dental health for me. Mm-hmm. So I have 9 fillings where the tooth material around the filling had worn away, and there were like these pockets underneath the tooth or underneath the filling. And so when I discovered this and I started to do this ionized calcium supplementation, after 7 months, they grew back by 85, 95%. And my gums got really good. My teeth got really tight. Like, I used to be able to eat something that was like crunchy or hard and it might bruise my gums. Yeah. It hurt like really bad for days, which is a sign of gum recession, gum weakness.
Right.
And when you have the osteoporosis of the jawbone starting, the gums start to recede and become sensitive. And so then that leads to pockets, and that leads to tooth loss eventually when you're in your 70s or 80s or whatever.
Right.
So I started to take this product, so, generously over 7 months, and the gums got really healthy, strong, no more pain. My teeth got really tight. Certain teeth are tight enough that I can't put floss between them.
Right.
And I used to have, in the foramen of my neck, I was developing calcification. So my nerves coming out of my vertebra and into my trapezius were all like feeling deadened and just strange.
Yeah.
So I got off. I was trained in the science of nutrition with a focus on Dr. Kerry Reams. And Dr. Kerry Reams was a famous soil biologist in the 30s and 40s and stuff. And he figured out soil fertility better than anybody. And he figured out human nutrition, biochemistry manipulation to get it back in balance better than most people in that day. So he had a high success rate with reversing disease and cancer in general, just fixing calcium levels and minerals in the body, and going to a plant-based diet sometimes and detoxing. But he focused on all forms of calcium. He believed it. You wanted to use different calciums for different reasons. And so that's what I was doing for all these years. And it finally led to calcification, calcium buildup in the holes out of which the spinal nerves come in the vertebra. And that was, that was problematic. Wasn't until I started to take ionic calcium, so Ca2 plus ionic calcium. So that's individual atoms of calcium missing 2 electrons.
Okay.
So it wasn't until I started to take that and got off the inorganic forms of calcium. Inorganic forms of calcium are just, even Ca2 plus is an inorganic form of calcium because it's not bound to carbon. But it's different. It's the specific form the body uses to regulate most all calcium biochemistry. And it's something your body has to make up to the age of 35. You make enough of it. After age 35, your production declines typically, unless you're really healthy. But, by the time you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, you've been chronically deficient, and your parathyroid is monitoring the levels. So the parathyroid says, okay, we have a deficiency. We need to turn on parathyroid hormone production. And that specifically makes you dissolve bone to compensate.
Right.
That leads to osteoporosis stuff. And it puts you in a chemistry state where you're starting to build up calcium, inorganic calcium, like calcium hydroxide, calcium carbonate, even all the chelated calciums, amino acid chelated calciums, protein bound chelated calciums. They can be problematic. Less so, but it's mostly the inorganic forms. So people that innocently drink spring water or whatever that's got calcium carbonate in it, and they're a certain age and they're deficient in the ionic calcium, they're in a chemistry state where their body's going to use the inorganic calcium to deposit into the soft tissues. So that's what had happened to me. I didn't know it until I was in my late 50s. And then I took the ionic calcium and got off the calcium hydroxide liquid calcium from Dr. Kerry Reams. I got off of that because that was what was contributing to the calcification. And in 2 weeks, all this calcification was gone in my foramen.
Wow.
So, and then I had one lady reverse her osteopenia doing a certain protocol with me using this product. Another lady reversed her gum recession. In 6 months, doing this protocol with me. And so, it's there's specific chemistries that you need to be in to get this all right. And the ionic calcium is at the foundation, because when you have enough of that, the parathyroid says, oh, okay, thank you very much. You've given me what I've been looking for. Now I don't need to produce parathyroid hormone to dissolve bone. So you stop dissolving bone, and now you're in a chemistry state to make bone. And there are several components to doing that besides ionic calcium. That's the most important one. But there's also vitamin K2, MK7, MK4 in particular. And then there's also the hormone component. So you're good at that because you're really healthy, you're really athletic. And, when you do any weight bearing exercises to your large muscle groups, your quads and your buttocks and stuff, that stress stimulates growth hormone release. And growth hormone is like the master repair hormone of the body. Every single cell of the body has a receptor site for growth hormone. And so, if you can keep it optimized through exercise, great. But I find most people in ill health don't have the strength or energy to exercise significantly. And so I found that, in fact, because I've had chronic fatigue syndrome, I've had adrenal exhaustion and the Epstein-Barr virus that created chronic fatigue. And so I would go exercise and I'd be more tired for days afterwards. It would drain me. So when you don't have that issue, you can exercise and it's a good stress and you're going to gain more, strength, muscle mass, mitochondria levels increase, all these things that are beneficial. But if you do have, adrenal issues and or thyroid adrenal issues and or a viral problem that's weakening you, then exercise can weaken you if you push yourself. You can only do mild exercise, walking and vibration plates and whatever, yoga. So from where I've come from, I like to make it so that the body's so overwhelmed with energy that it can't sit still and it wants to exercise. In other words, I teach people that don't force yourself to exercise, don't do mind over matter stuff unless you have the reserve energy and the ability to know that that reserve energy is going to come to play by mentally pushing yourself and you're going to gain in the long run. If you don't have that and you're just doing it because it's some sort of like a mental belief, I say don't do it then. Instead, create the biochemical conditions whereby you have so much ATP production, so much energy production that it actually feels good to exercise and you want to exercise.
Right.
So, barring that, not having the energy to exercise, I use peptides to bring in the hormone component.
Right.
So I, in 2019, started to use injectable peptides for myself. I had all these miraculous results. During my journey of having these health issues in the past, one of them was a hyperthyroid, where my heart beat at 83 beats a minute, 24/7. If I ate something I reacted to, like milk, it'd go up to 90 plus beats a minute, and I'd be bedridden for 3 hours. And so I had that for like 3.5 years. My heart got weak. I started to develop water retention. And so I started to use epitalin peptide and BPC-157 peptide twice a day injectably. And at the end of 2 weeks, all of a sudden I was like peeing every 45 minutes, like large volumes of urine.
Yeah.
After 3 days, 97% of my water retention was gone. So I go, okay, I healed my heart and my kidneys doing these 2 peptides. They caught up with repair or with water circulation.
Yeah.
So that was my first miraculous recovery. I had other ones. I had breast cancer, prostate cancer. Breast cancer went away. I'd use natural therapies and it would go away, and then it would come back a year later. And then I do natural therapies. They'd go away and it come, back a year later.
Right.
So I did that and it happened 4 years in a row. By the 4th time it came back, I go, okay, I'm not getting rid of the cancer stem cell with what I'm doing. And so this thing keeps coming back. So I started to use this injectable peptide into pectoralis muscle next to the nipple where the cancer was. And I did that once a week for like 7 weeks and it went away.
Yeah.
It never came back.
Wow.
So, and then there's, so basically for the bone density formation, because growth hormone plays this dominant role, I have a peptide blend where it's a fragment of the growth hormone peptide that specifically focuses on bone formation.
Mm.
So it's that plus a combination of pineolon and several others. It's about 4 different peptides in one formula that all work synergistically to support the hormonal aspect of bone formation. So if a person does those injections, plus they do the Synergy K, which is the vitamin D, K1, K2 combination, they do the atomic calcium. And because the soils are deficient and there's a hidden hunger in the body if you don't get trace minerals, I put colloidal minerals in that package. So they're getting the 64 trace minerals that are believed to be needed by the 64 codons of the DNA. And then there's also silica. Silica is really good. Bioavailable, 100% absorbable silica stimulates collagen synthesis. So with regards to the 90% of the bone structure is collagen protein. So you're supporting the strength and flexibility of the bones so they're not fragile and subject to fracture and breakage with collagen. And it's a plant-based product, so I like that. Yeah. And also the thyroid's involved in bone reabsorption, the thyroid hormone. So I have 3 different packages on my website that I have for this. Is called getbonesofsteel.com, getbonesofsteel.com. Cool. And awesome. If you go there, you'll learn all this stuff and you'll see there's 3 packages: the foundation package, the advanced package, and the elite package. The elite package is addressing the thyroid component and the digestive tract component.
Okay.
So I have a client in Australia who it's a couple, and the lady, when she gave birth cesarean, the doctor left tissue in her body that should have been removed. I don't know if it's the placenta. I don't know what it was, but he left some tissue in her body after the cesarean delivery, and it led to this chronic infection. So she was on IV antibiotics for like 3.5 years.
Oh, man.
Long time. And she went into advanced osteoporosis during that time.
Yeah.
And so I looked up, the research on this, and sure enough, um, you know, taking antibiotics for 9 months or more is, I believe even shorter than that for many people, because it destroys so many of your own beneficial bacteria and causes you to spontaneously grow fungus and pathogenic bacteria in your gut. You now have organisms that are producing, this is what I believe is going on. They're producing acids in excess of your body's ability to buffer them. So your body has to buffer them by stealing the calcium out of the bones to neutralize the acids.
Right.
And so in the elite package, it's addressing the microbiome with the product called ProGert. ProGert's the only probiotic product on the market that's from human. It's actually the full spectrum of human organisms. So there's depending on what research you read, there's anywhere from 1,000 to 8,000 different organisms that are supposed to live in the human GI tract in a healthy gut.
Right.
So this is giving you all of those. And most people don't know that when they take Lactobacillus acidophilus, Bifido, different strains, that most of them are all transitory. They're not human strains that colonize the gut. So they only live and serve your gut in a beneficial way for 3 to 10 days before they die off.
Right.
So this ProGert is different because when provided you eat good, you have fiber in the diet to feed them, then it'll colonize and continue to live there and grow and multiply and produce the short chain fatty acids, butyrate primarily, that will keep the gut in its acidic state, the 5.5 pH.
Right.
And then that plays a strong role in ionizing the calcium that's protein-bound calcium. So when you eat milk, when you drink milk, eat cheese, eat leafy greens, eat nuts or seeds that have calcium in them, the digestive process has to use acids and pepsin to cause the first breakdown of food and ionization. But then it's mostly the short chain fatty acids throughout the small and large intestine and the enzymes that cleave off the proteins and give you some ionized calcium that absorbs through your intestinal tract into your bloodstream, and it's Ca2 plus ionic calcium.
Right.
And that's what the body's always looking for. That's what regulates the majority of calcium biochemistry. And just to show you how important it is not only for bone formation, but ionic calcium regulates adult stem cell production. It's what tells your nerve cells to fire and release neurotransmitters. It's what's involved in your heart and skeletal muscles contracting. It's also what's involved in maintaining the intracellular pH at the ideal is 7.3545. It's also what causes cell division. It's involved in cell division, mitosis. It's involved in ATP production. DNA, the actual DNA formation is dependent upon it. So it's it does so many things. It's like a hormone. And just your mood, bone density, everything can be positively affected from supplementing with it because, like I said, after age 35, your production declines.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that particular product, and I call it atomic calcium, that's the name of it, comes in a powder. It's a specially processed calcium oxide. So it's processed at high heat. So when you add it to water, the oxygen comes off, you create more OH negative ions, which makes your water more alkaline. You also create the Ca2 plus, and it's 23.5 milligrams of Ca2 plus ionic calcium per 1/8 teaspoon scoop. Put that in your water. And you always drink it on an empty stomach because you don't want it to go into the intestines and become protein bound. You want it to absorb through the stomach wall. So it has to be done morning and before dinner. So when you wake up in the morning and before dinner again, and and then there are conditions where people are so acidic because maybe they have cancer and they're producing a lot of acids. Maybe they have hidden infections, they're producing a lot of acids. Maybe they got root canals causing acids production. A lot of different things that can contribute to excess acidity, and including their diet. And so you might be so acidic that your body's going to use this ionic calcium first just to keep the pH corrected instead of using it for bone formation.
Yeah.
So you have to get your body, in order for the atomic calcium product to really contribute to bone formation, you want to make sure your body pH is in the alkaline state, which is 7.35, 7.45 in the tissues, but you can get it reflected in your saliva and in your urine. And there's different teachers on this subject, but the one that I'm sticking with at this point is that saliva pH should be in the morning when you wake up, before you eat, drink, or brush your teeth, between 5 and 7 a.m. You can spit on pH paper, and the ideal saliva pH would be 7.2 to 7.5.
And if it's that's a huge driver for just overall health too.
Yeah. Yeah, because your oxygen levels, so people don't know, oxygen in the body So oxygen is like the big antidote. You
Right.
have enough oxygen, you kill viruses, you kill fungus, you kill tumor cells, you produce energy. And it's interesting to note that when, in all these years of studying this subject, I've learned that you go back to prehistoric times, millions of years ago, and when resin was oozing out of the side of a tree, and it rolled over a pocket of air and trapped the air inside of the resin and petrified. That air has been analyzed, and it was at like 33 or 32% oxygen.
Wow.
And today, oxygen is anywhere from 10% in a heavily smoggy city, to as high as 21% under ideal conditions with lots of forest and plants producing oxygen. So 21% compared to like that 32% or so, it's just like vastly different. And back then, 32% oxygen or more, you have trees growing, that are like tall as, buildings, huge. And, some of the stumps of trees you could see on the earth today that are, believed just to be mountaintops, but no, you look at the actual, structure of a tree, the columns, that's exactly the way these rock structures look. The same columns as the trees' filaments. So, under ideal conditions, the human body would be breathing 32% oxygen in the air, and it's not. So if we're down to like, 15 to 21%, depending upon where you live, you're always deficient in oxygen in terms of atmospherically. So, and what also controls oxygen in your body is your pH. When you're acidic, your oxygen becomes bound to your red blood cells so tightly that it's not releasing into the tissues as completely. And so that lowered oxygen levels caused by an acid pH causes the anaerobic organisms in your body to grow. So human body is full of spores. So, they've done studies and they found that when the body dies and you analyze the decomposition process, they've identified 30 different kinds of microscopic mushrooms that grow out of the body to decompose it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And when I did dark field microscopy and I studied Dr. Gunther Enderlein's work, I studied Royal Raymond Reif's work, I studied Gaston Nasson's work, and I studied Antoine Béchamp's work. Antoine Béchamp was the first discoverer of this basic protein in all life. It's in the soil, it's in the plants, it's in animals, it's in humans. He calls it the microzyma. So he did all this research and proved that, decomposition of dead things is caused by the microzyma.
Right.
And it's in our bodies. And so if terrain conditions become unhealthy, it contributes to producing enzymes to digest the tissues to free up the toxins. And then you go forward to the work of Gunther Enderlein, who did 40 years of microscopic analysis of human blood and basically gave a new vocabulary to parts of the blood that's not being acknowledged or by modern day science. So he called the basic protein in the blood the endobiont, and that endobiont was serving your body in a healthy manner if you kept the terrain healthy. So if the terrain was oxygenated, you were in the proper pH range, you were free of toxins, then, that was proper oxygen levels, then that basic spore-like substance helped your cells remain healthy. But when your terrain changed, you became toxic, acidified, lower in oxygen, this thing would start to grow into its pathogenic form and finally reaching the state of being a fungus. And he said there were three primary endobionts. One was mucorrhesmosis. That's the one that causes congestion in the body. So it contributes to cardiovascular problems and any poor circulation in the body. Aspergillus niger was the other one that creates cancer, lung problems, candida. And that was the other one. That was the three main ones that, in their pathogenic phase produces fungus that causes disease. And if you look at the work of Dr. Simoncini, the Italian physician, he's proven fungus is growing in all tumors.
Right.
Because it's an acid pH, and so that's a low oxygen level. So, just having the alkalinity in the body corrected raises the oxygen levels to more optimum state. Just because now the red blood cells, that whatever they're picking up from the air, they'll more readily transfer that oxygen into the tissues. Less hypoxia. And that's another thing. When you do a pulse oximeter, it's not always accurate because it's reading the blood oxygen levels in the capillaries, not necessarily what's in the tissues. And so you can have 98% oxygen levels in your capillaries because that's where the oxygen is bound, but it's not necessarily transmitting into the tissues optimally.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. So pH is big, important.
And that's a big, and that goes along with everything, right? Not just oxygen, but everything like nutrients, minerals, vitamins. You can have it in the blood and it can look great, but if it's not getting into the cells where it needs to be, that's where the breakdown is.
Yeah.
And that there can be so many different things that can be causing that, but yeah, the pH is something that I think so many people overlook, and it's something that can be changed through so many different avenues that are not necessarily massively expensive, right? It's just you change your diet, you start eating things that are going to be more alkaline, changing the water you drink, doing different things, and adding a little supplement here and there, because like you said, the soil deficiency is ridiculous at what we're dealing with, right? It's not just there's less oxygen in the air. There's the mineral density in the soil is minuscule compared to what it used to be.
Yes. Correct.
And you add on top of that we're adding pollution to it that we also have to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, just the chemtrails alone, if you look at the video online called The Dimming by Dane Wigington, and you learn about the whole chemtrail subject in detail, they've done the analysis and they know it's aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese, a couple other elements. And some people are saying now graphene and stuff too. And you listen to Dietrich Klinghardt, a super advanced holistic physician. He's basically monitoring this with a clinic in Germany that does blood analysis to determine the aluminum levels in the blood. And he says it's 100 times higher than it should be in the human blood nowadays because of what you're inhaling 24/7 from aluminum-based chemtrails falling from the sky. So yeah, pollution is an all-time high. So anytime a pollutant comes into the body and bonds to any of your tissues, it's injuring the cell. So the cell's now less efficient at its job of actually running the machinery to convert glucose into ATP. So if one molecule of glucose ideally converts into 38 units of ATP, that's like maximum combustion and no waste.
Right.
So just like the carburetor of a car not working efficiently, you could have a carburetor of a car that can convert all the gas vapor into energy, get 200 miles a gallon, and there's no exhaust. Mm-hmm. But because we don't live in a spiritually advanced enough, moral, heart-centered society to do that, we end up having car exhaust, less efficient production. In Europe, you get like I think twice the miles per gallon there just because gas is higher there. So they can make cars to get twice the amount of mileage.
Right.
So it's the same with the cells, in that you have efficient conversion of glucose into energy. So that's 30 units of energy for a molecule of glucose versus when the cell is compromised, which can be because toxins are sitting in it or on side it, next to it, inhibiting its function. And so you end up with less than 38 units of ATP, and you go down and down and down and down. So say it's at 30 units, or say it's at 25 units or 20 units. If you only make 20 units of ATP, then what's the remainder? If there was 38 units potential, then what's the remainder? Right. It's more lactic acid production. Right. So your cells are producing more lactic acid when they're toxic. So you have even a stronger crisis of trying to keep your body pH alkaline, simply because of the amount of toxins you're exposed to. And then you add to that the stress, psychological stress, negative electromagnetic fields, and everything is driving the body to be excessively acidic. Even your own metabolism, if you did nothing at all and you lived under Edenic conditions, your body still produces more acids in a day than alkali. So that's one of the examples I use is the Hunza people. The Hunza people. Mm-hmm. Yep. So they're a culture of people that live in between Pakistan and Turkey, and they live to be 120 to 140 years of age. Yep. They don't have any crime. They don't have any courts. They don't have any police. They're a sane society. Well, they're drinking glacial snowmelt water every day, and their water is so full of calcium that they're getting about 1/3 of rock calcium in their water every day, plus all the trace minerals.
Right.
So that's what they drink, and that's what they irrigate their fields with. So they're getting alkalinization every day, plus the minerals needed for metabolic enzyme production. I mean, there's approximately 75,000 different enzymes produced in the body, and that number can vary depending upon what you read. But, each enzyme requires a mineral. Most enzymes require a mineral to make it active.
Yeah.
So, a lot of the, all the people reaching out for, microdosing ketamine, microdosing psilocybin, microdosing or consuming, using cannabis, drinking alcohol, all of that is trying to overcome your already inherent ability to produce euphoric chemicals that make you feel full of love, full of joy, full of intelligence, because your nervous system and your brain and your hormone levels are all optimized because you're getting the nutrients needed for it to all work. And you're eating enough living foods. That's another thing. When you're young, you don't really notice it, but when you're older and your biology no longer has the number of mitochondria in the cells, you don't make proteins as fast because your hormones are lower, then the effect of cooked foods becomes more pronounced.
Right.
And so raw foods still have, not as many enzymes as they should have, because we don't have superfoods anymore, even if they're organic.
Yeah.
Lou Corona teaches it's like basically even organic produce is 30 to 80% less enzymes in it than it should have.
Yeah.
So, that's where juicing comes in. You were talking about earlier about natural ways to alkalinize. So one of the best natural ways to alkalinize is green vegetable juice.
Right.
Provided you have a good microbiome and you can handle the oxalates, because there are people that are exceptions. They're very sensitive to oxalates. They're not breaking them down, so they just get in the body and cause problems, and greens are high in oxalates. So that's the exception for those people. But for most people, they can handle vegetable juices. They're a living food. They're full of concentrated enzymes, phytochemicals, antioxidants, all this stuff. Structured water. It's going to hydrate you better. It's going to detoxify you better, alkalinize you better. So, that's a wonderful alkalinizing food supplement. And Dr. Norman Walker, so he lived to be 100. Dr. Norman Walker is the guy that invented juicing.
Okay.
So Norman Walker himself, back late 1800s, struggled with health issues, was so compromised, he literally was sent to live on an island with village people to live a less stressful life. So while with them, he started to grate carrots and squeeze them through a cotton t-shirt, and then drink the juice. And he noticed such an improvement that he came back to the States and engineered a juicer called the Norwalk juicer, which is no longer in production, but there's one that's similar to it called Pure Juicer or Pure Juice. And basically he lived on juice, salads, nuts, and cottage cheese.
Yeah.
And fruit. That was his diet. And colonics. He was really big into colonics, keeping the colon clean. Yeah. Okay. So that guy lived to be 117 years old. And never fasted, just did juices, all these things. Yeah. So that's an example of, eating living foods on a regular basis with the concentrated juices, makes it possible for, and this is another thing. So I talked about the endobiont, I talked about the microzyma, and then gasolinase called it the somatid, and then Royal Raymond Rife, go to rifevideos.com. If you want to understand microbiology out there, whoever your listeners are, hello listeners, and you want to understand microbiology, not be at the effect of what people like, Anthony Fauci or whatever, people that are like telling you this is what the science says. I'm telling you right now that Royal Rife did the most research on microbiology and understood the subject better than anybody on the planet to date. Yeah. So he developed a microscope that could see at 60,000 magnifications. So he could see living virus, fungus, and bacteria and watch them in their metabolic cycle and see what they evolved into. Because he had a theory that cancer was caused by a microbe. So he actually went to Germany, studied with the Zeiss lens making company that makes lenses for microscopes, to know how to make his own lenses, to be able to engineer a microscope with all these different lenses and use light only and he had to split the white light into the various rainbow spectrums to get the different shades of, green, different shades of blue, whatever, to finally make the microorganisms visible in a living state. Yeah. And so he, developed a technology that could vibrate the viruses to death, cured cancer with it. But in all his culture work, he said he could take the BX cancer virus that was causing cancer, put it on, and it was on a protein medium, it would stay a virus. If you put it onto a starch medium, it would turn into a fungus. If you put the fungus back onto the protein medium, it would turn back into a virus. And then he said he identified 10 groups of bacteria, and that dependent upon changes in pH, would determine their expression. So if the pH changed from 6.9 to 6.8, or just a few fractions in between there, it would go from staphylococcal to pneumococcal. And if you changed a few more points in the acid direction, or whatever direction, it would become streptococcal or some other microbe. So he said there were 17 different bacterial expressions for one organism.
Wow.
Amongst 10 groups of bacteria.
Mm.
And so he said that when it came to pathogenic organisms, he said that if the culture medium was a neutral pH of 7, it would not grow.
Right.
So that's another thing that people need to understand regarding microorganisms, is that pH is the foundational determinant of whether or not a natural microbe pathogen would grow. And so hence, if you're keeping your body in that 7.35, 7.45 pH window, you're immune because you have proper oxygen levels. You're immune from a bacteria growing in a natural organism growing in your body, not the man-made biowarfare,
Sure.
engineered organisms that have pathology only, just natural God-created organisms, because God-created organisms are there to be nature's janitors. They're there to digest, decompose dead, dying, toxic, and decaying tissue, not harm you. And so if you let a cold or flu run its course, you're healthier on the other side of it because your body's detoxified. If you try and stop the cold or flu with, Tylenol, which is a fever-breaking medication, or if you take an antibiotic to stop a bacterial infection, you're stopping the detox process. So now the toxins stay stuck in your tissues. And there's a book on this called Homotoxicology by Hans Reckewig, and he teaches basically, he studied and identified natural bacteria, and they produce this enzyme called hyaluronidase. Hyaluronidase will digest your connective tissue to free up the toxins. Yeah. So if you take the antibiotic, or you take the Tylenol, you stop the fever, you stop the bacterial process, you cause the toxins to stay buried in the tissues. And if they don't let your next cold or flu get them out, you keep doing the same thing, will lead to cancer later on.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that I tell people all the time, and do myself. And I rarely get a fever, but if I do, and my wife is like, you should take something. I'm like, no, I'm fine. Like, let it run its course.
Yeah.
There's extreme levels. Sure. Of course. Right. If it gets way too high, okay, like seek help, do something. But like, if it's a low grade fever, 99, 100, 101, like, let the thing run its course. Is it going to be a little bit of discomfort? Sure. But like, you're going to be better off on the other side of it, like you said. And so is that why, like, the what you just said is like, to me is like, okay, if our body is acidic, especially if it's, far off from neutral, right? If we're in the 6.8, 6.7, which I would think a lot of people are, that when those microbes come in contact, when those bacteria come in contact, is that from the natural instinct of them thinking this body's starting to decompose because it's acidic?
Yeah, well, what it is, it's a low oxygen environment, and so they're already in you. So basically the bacteria either are in their already formed bacterial state, or you have the spore form of their earlier version. So, these spores that I talked about grow into your bacteria, virus, and fungus in your body when the terrain is unhealthy. So it's like nature set it up, God set it up, that if you don't live in harmony with natural law, then your body is taken out, because God only wants healthy organisms to reproduce, healthy plants, healthy animals, and so that means that if you're not eating a biologically regenerative diet, and you keep on creating an unhealthy terrain, you're gonna create conditions where you're less able to reproduce.
Yeah.
So
similar to, because I live in Texas, so we get a lot of drought time, right? And and then we'll get spurts of rain, and we had some rain last week. We're getting ready to have some rain this coming weekend, but we've been in a drought for weeks, and my kids are teenagers, and so they don't necessarily notice it as much anymore. But there was a time a couple of years ago where we'd have some rain, 2 or 3 days of rain, and all of a sudden there's mushrooms in the yard.
Yeah.
right? And it's like, where'd those come from? Well, they were always there,
The spore was there.
right? It was there. Then it got what it needed to grow.
Yeah, exactly. And a little bit going back a little bit to what you said earlier about the fever thing. So here's an example of a holistic guy, you know, Dr. Ed Group. I've taken his training course on health stuff. And anyways, I heard him talk not too long ago about how his son one time had a fever of 106 and it only lasted like 10 seconds.
Okay.
And then it started to come down. And so it's basically trusting that the body in its own instincts of self-preservation always does what's necessary. And it might take you to an extreme, but it knows best what needs to be done before that you can't handle it any further.
Right.
And to not fear that, but to trust that.
Yeah.
So, you know, it can go up to 106 before you're going to be at a temperature, because tumor cells get killed at 108.
Yeah.
I mean, a hyperthermia to kill a tumor cell is 108.
Yeah.
So, you know, 106 to kill a microorganism, that's totally tolerable for the body to deal with. It's not you got to take an aspirin or whatever.
Right. So, and you talked about detoxing several times. Is there a specific like best way to detox, or is it dependent on what you're dealing with that you're trying to get removed?
Probably a combination of things to answer that, because each person's different with where they're at and their different health challenges. You know, but the thing is that the human digestive tract controls the level of glutathione production in terms of whether or not the gut's inflamed or whether or not it's uninflamed. So if the small intestine's inflamed, then the rest of the body's downregulated in its glutathione production. So glutathione is the specific compound that's responsible for 60% of your detoxability at the cellular level.
Okay.
So upregulating glutathione production is the means by which you can remove the chemicals, the metals, aluminum, plastics, graphene, all these different things. And your liver's involved. So if your liver's congested, then you need to work on decongesting your liver. Most people, because of previous ignorance on diet, have eaten a way that's contributed to liver congestion and need to do some liver detoxification, liver flushes, specific liver flushes that I work with for a period of weeks to get the liver up to speed. They need to fix their gut microbiome. So there's a two-step process to fix the gut microbiome. One is you have to take these yogurts that I teach you how to make, where you do this one yogurt for 3 weeks or for 1 month, and it's specific strains of probiotics that are good at producing bacteriocins. So specific strain of L. reuteri, specific strain of L. gasseri, specific strain of Bacillus coagulans, that all three you make this yogurt out of and you consume it, and they're going into the gut as the policeman. And because they're producing these bacteriocins, they're killing off the virus, fungus, bacteria that aren't supposed to be there. Yeah. And then after a month of that, then you get into a different yogurt with the full spectrum. That's the ProGurt one. And you start consuming that. And then over the course of, it could take 8-12 months. But time goes and you get these good guys that are constantly going into the gut, and then they're starting to colonize, and they're feeding on the fiber in your diet, and the fiber enables them to produce butyrate and other short-chain fatty acids. The butyrate and other short-chain fatty acids are healing any holes in the gut. If there's leaky gut, they're causing the villi to grow in length so your assimilation improves. Then the muscular tubing to the intestinal tract, if you have weak peristalsis and weak transit time, that starts to become thicker, so you develop a stronger circular muscular tubing for better peristalsis. So at the end of 8 to 12 months, you know, provided you haven't killed the nerves, like I went through the experience when I was 15, I was mercury poisoned from dental fillings, mercury fillings. And the mercury came off in such high amounts that it killed the nerves in my gut. Yeah. So I lost like a large percentage of my intestinal nerves, and I suffered like life-threatening constipation for 4 years. Yeah. And I hardly ate for 4 years. And that's what led to adrenal exhaustion when I was 20. Yeah. So provided your nerves are there and they haven't been destroyed from previous mercury exposure from dental fillings, then in 8 to 12 months, you will have a restored digestive tract. Good, strong peristalsis. I just did this with my brother not too long ago. He cured his chronic constipation. He had chronic constipation his whole life. And at age 67, 68, I introduced him to this, and he did it and in 8 months, his gut's working normal for the first time in his life. Yeah. And so And then if you have mercury that's killed off the nerves, mercury doesn't come out easily on its own. So you have to do things that are specifically helping your body produce more glutathione, specifically introducing things that chelate mercury out of the body so that you get the mercury removed so that you can grow back the nerves.
Right.
And then there's specific ways to increase your adult stem cells and specific ways to activate nerve growth that's in the usage of injectable peptides. So you can get, gut health back. It just takes a little bit of time,
Right. Well, and then the constipation thing, and whether it's chronic or just, every now and then, but that transit time, slowing down the transit time going through the digestive tract can also cause so many problems from a fermenting standpoint, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. The ideal transit time is 12 to 24 hours. That's how fast food should go through the gut. So yeah, when food stays in the system too long and ferments, if it's a carbohydrate, or putrefies if it's a protein, then you've got fermentative toxins, you've got putrefactive toxins that are absorbed into your bloodstream. And then you wonder why you have bad breath or why you have body odor.
Right.
It's not normal to need a deodorant.
Yeah.
Deodorants just cover up or perfume things, but isn't addressing the cause, which is that you have some degree of putrefaction and fermentation in your digestive tract, and those gases are going into your blood, and your body uses your skin as an avenue of elimination, just like it uses your breath as an avenue of elimination.
Right.
But when you're clean, you're healthy, you have good digestion, good elimination, no fermentation, no putrefaction, then there's no odor to your breath. There's no bad. There's just probably a pleasant odor. There's no odor at all.
Yeah.
And
the mercury piece, and I agree, because I've heard it's very difficult to detox that piece, but it's not impossible. But that's something that so many people are probably listening to, going, "Oh wait, I have mercury in my teeth because I'm at a certain age where that's what they did back then." Don't just go to your dentist and go take it out.
Correct.
Right. It's got to be done in a certain way to be able to avoid continued exposure and other problems that could come.
Yeah. So when you learn about this, you want to remove the fillings in a safe manner. The safe manner is that the dentist is going to use a rubber dam around the tooth that's being drilled upon. So as the particulate of mercury is being drilled out as a dust, it's not going into your mouth and you're swallowing any of it. It's being caught by this rubber dam. And then they usually have vacuum suction next to your mouth where the vapors of your breath are being sucked away from your mouth. So you're not re-inhaling the mercury vapor that's coming off. And sometimes they give you a separate set of oxygen through the nose, but vacuum suction is pretty good too. So typically a person that does that is called a biological dentist. But not all biological dentists are good dentists, because that's when I got my mercury fillings removed in 1991. The dentist that I went to replaced them, and he replaced them with material that I didn't know at the time what it was, but it was a white material that, was supposedly safe. But then after they were put in there, the inside of my cheek was dying all the time. So I constantly was sloughing off with my tongue dead cheek tissue. And that went that way for about 7 years.
Oh, wow.
Before I went to this chiropractor who used this, the QXCI device to scan me. And he said, well, after all the scanning, he goes, the number one problem for your body is your teeth. Something's with your teeth. So when I got back home, I called up that dentist and I said, what was the filling material you put into my teeth? He says, it's called Herculite. So then I called up my biological dentist friend. I says, what's this Herculite material? He says, oh yeah, they put a ton of radioactivity into the Herculite so they could see it on an X-ray easily. So extra high levels of barium or some radioactive material was in there, and the radioactivity was coming out of the teeth and killing my cheek.
Yeah.
And my immune system I was messed up for all those years.
Right.
So you got to go to a dentist that knows his stuff. You got to go in there with foreknowledge, ask him the questions. Are you going to use a rubber dam? Are you going to use vacuum suction? What is the biocompatible material you're going to replace these fillings with, or that you suggest I replace them with? If you're not going to get the more expensive porcelain, which pretty much everybody's body can handle, then you're going to go with a resin composite. So find out that it's biocompatible. And then there's a website called International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology, and it's short IAOMT.org. IAOMT.org is a directory for all the biological dentists in North America. That'll be
cool.
in your state or maybe even in Canada, your province.
Yeah.
So that's where you could start if you don't know who in your community is already a biological dentist. And then, you call them up, you make the appointment, you get the analysis, you find out the cost, and you do it.
Right.
And there's also dentists in Mexico that do it just as good, but much cheaper. If the price tag is too high and you can't afford it, look up, there's a dental clinic developed by Dr. Hal Huggins. He's passed away. And, but he started up a clinic in Mexico called holistic biodentistry or biodentistry, holistic, something like that. It's in Tijuana. I think I went in Tijuana, another part of Mexico, but they'll do just as good a job, but more affordably.
Right. Well, and so to touch on that piece, right, the affordable piece, because I know a lot of people say, oh, it's too expensive to eat healthy. It's too expensive to add these supplements, or it's too expensive to whatever it is in the health world, right? But like, it's not too expensive to live a healthy life. Like, if I'd rather pay the cost and live healthy than look at the other side of it 10 or 20 years from now.
Yeah. And look, what I say is that wherever you're at with your finances, you do the best you can. So back in the days when I was like going, okay, well, I got this much to spend, I'd buy grass-fed hamburger, not the steak. And I'd buy oatmeal, and I'd buy, organic oatmeal, and the cheapest version of what was healthy. That's what I would get. And then you recognize that each time you do that, that's an act of self-love. And when you believe in your subconscious that you're worth the best that God has to offer, and you choose that choice and that reaffirmation of that thought in your subconscious mind helps you attract success into your life that enables the money to be there to live a life that's abundant. Because really, abundance is about subconscious mind beliefs. And if we have proper subconscious mind beliefs, then we can attract whatever it is we want that equates success for us, whether that's money, relationship, fame, fortune, whatever it is you need as a soul to evolve. If you believe in your subconscious that it's something you can have, guess what? It's going to come to you automatically. So if you don't have the money right now, you might have the money in 6 months if you just change your subconscious beliefs.
Right. Well, and that goes along with your health too, right? Because like if your cells 100% listen to what you tell yourself.
Yeah.
And if you tell yourself, I'm unhealthy, I'm going to die from cancer, or I'm going to, whatever that is, like, your cells will manifest that.
Yeah. I mean, it's an energy field. It's like the subconscious mind propagates a huge energy field in the body. And so if that belief is a life negating belief, then consequently that manifests physically in the body. If the life affirming belief, then it's, enables you to have the, voltage and the energy flowing through the body for that to happen. It's just so much of the mind is involved. I mean, it's just like when you take the training with Dr. Jerry Tennant, it says emotions and dental infections are the two biggest problems. Basically, unresolved emotions, negative emotions, and dental infections. Those are the two biggest interferences to health.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and it's so I say it's simple, right? But it's not like you've got to do the work. You got to figure out what's going on. You've got to not take just, okay, you think this is what it is, that's going to solve the symptom. What's the root cause?
Yeah.
What's really driving these things? And I'm a firm believer that if your pH is low, like you've got to address that, and then like see what that fixes, because that'll fix so many things.
Yeah.
I mean, just change that part of your life.
Just adding cesium to like a protocol was developed years ago for cancer using the high pH therapy, which is cesium chloride. So cesium chloride, like if you look at some research on this, with long-lived people's, they have rubidium or cesium in their water or soils and water. And cesium is super alkalinizing, and it mimics what potassium does. It kind of competes for potassium. So you have to take potassium with it so you don't have a potassium deficiency. Right. But cesium is very alkalinizing, and that causes an increase in oxygen. So when you increase the alkalinity to the cells, the extracellular and the intracellular fluids climb back up to 7.345 and even maybe 7.55 temporarily, just temporarily, briefly, you're going to increase oxygen levels to a therapeutically higher level. And you literally can feel it. If you take enough cesium chloride in water and drink it, you get an oxygen buzz. Your face tingles, your brain feels a little bit oxygenated. And they've cured cancer with that because, basically cancer can't exist in an alkaline, oxygen-rich environment.
Right. So what, for somebody that's like, okay, I want to follow along with what Stephen's doing, I want to learn more, how can they get in touch with you?
So my website for consultations is called synergisticnutrition.com. Synergistic, Synergistic, and then the word nutrition.com. That's where my main website is with products that I've carried for years, or my consultation services, peptides that I offer. And I've offered like 4 different kinds of consults. Person that's just only has a small amount to spend, person that wants a full comprehensive consult, and then also a cancer consult, which is more investment of my time and energy to teach that person some things. So there's four different price structures for that.
And I think one of the things that you would agree with is that like there's not just a take this and you're going to be fine.
Yeah, not at all.
Everybody's going to have a different situation and everybody's going to have a different thing going on in their body, both from what we've eaten or consumed to what we've exposed ourselves to there's just the whole wide gamut of things. And so just because something worked for your neighbor doesn't mean it's going to work for you, but it doesn't also mean that there's not something that's going to work for you.
Well, guaranteed there's something that will work for you. Anybody can get well or improve dramatically if they just basically trust that that's natural law. Natural law, God's structure is to want to restore wholeness, harmony, symmetry, health in any living organism, human or otherwise. If you just, in human cases, it's because you have to think first to attract that into your life. So you have to have the beliefs that it'll happen. And that's the problem, is that a lot of people's beliefs are allopathically oriented. So, they get an infection and then they go, well, or they're on medications. And I go, well, I consulted with people a couple weeks ago in their 70s. And it's like, one of them's on a medication that stops the breakdown of epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine, your excitatory neurotransmitters, which, anytime you stop the breakdown of a neurotransmitter, that means it stays in the synaptic cleft longer. And based on evidence, theory is that you're burning out the receptor, the synaptic cleft. So you have fewer receptors to receive stuff. So that's why people that are on SSRI drugs have become suicidal and killed others, because they've lost so many of their serotonin receptors that they all of a sudden flip because they don't have the calming neurotransmitter in enough supply, or in this case, excitatory neurotransmitters. So I taught her, I said, okay, the nutrient that will raise your epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine is tyrosine. Tyrosine and acetyl L-tyrosine, or phenylalanine, that converts into tyrosine. Plus you have to have B6, and plus you have to have vitamin C and bioflavonoids. If you do this, you will naturally increase your epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine so that you don't need the medication, because the medication is harming you. That's period. It's not addressing causes. And so it's frustrating because that was 2 weeks ago and they never bought my recommendations.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid, because their subconscious is programmed that the medications are safe, effective, and they're coming from a doctor who wears a white coat, who went to 8 years of medical school, and he should know, or she should know.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, the mind, as brilliant as it might be, can be full of incorrect information. Like a really well-made computer can be full of incorrect information. So you're not going to actually be able to compute what you want to compute on a fantastic computer with incorrect information. So it's the same with the mind. You can be really brilliant in your ability to learn, recall information, write your essays, reports, give speeches, and get your A's in school and get your degree, and yet get all that information is incorrect, but it's gone into your subconscious. And because the subconscious runs the show, and you don't know that, and you don't know how to change that, then your subconscious is going to steal your feelings away from the truth.
Right.
So that's the problem, is that if you have in your subconscious that eating your birthday cake once a year and eating ice cream with it is an emotionally honoring, fun thing because you've done it with family. You were always the center of attention on your birthday and stuff. So you keep doing that. That's your subconscious saying this feels good or whatever,
Right.
while the act itself is harming you.
Right. Yep. No, I mean, that's in your subconscious. It does so much. And I deal with athletes, and that's one of the things I try to get them to, like, your subconscious is going to tell you to stop because it hurts and you're quote running out of energy or you're tired. And it's like if you ran it, a lot of my athletes will run a mile or a 2 mile race, 5K. And I'm like, if you've already completed 3/4 of the race and then you want to give up, but you're almost finished and you've trained multiple months for this and da, 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 you don't think your body can handle that? Like, that's your subconscious saying, I think we should probably stop. When you're all your goals, all your conscious, you want to do it, but you've got to overcome that subconscious. It's going, I've never run that fast. I don't think I can, or
Right.
this hurts, or, oh, I'm gonna, and like, have people died from running too hard? Yes, but it's such a very, very rare thing. Um, but you have to get over that, and that subconscious will hold you back. And I think that holds us back from so many things in life.
Yeah.
Can't start a business, can't get healthy, can't do all these things because the subconscious says, no, that's not who we are.
But the thing is, in order for an athlete or somebody to push themselves or to go beyond what they've gone before, it has to already be in the subconscious so that the limiting thought doesn't even arise.
Right.
So it's like they encounter the limiting thought when they're in their exercise or their competitive event. And okay, they need to go back and get it to the subconscious, because it takes you literally have to grow new dendrites, and the dendrites have to connect to new nerve cells in order for this something new belief to be installed in the physical architecture of the brain.
Yeah.
And so you have to repeat the belief and stuff for like 29 days at a deep enough, at a level of thought that's actually working, which sometimes is at the theta brainwave state, in order for it to actually take effect. Because if you just make an affirmation and you're not in a theta brainwave state, so it doesn't go into the subconscious, you could say that for 29 days and it's not necessarily changing you.
Right.
So,
Yep.
I basically, because I was raised in a family where it was like you push yourself. So my dad said, you'll get a second wind. Just keep pushing yourself. You'll get a second wind. And when I was young, I did. I mean, that's all we did. I mean,
Sure.
The football training that we went through, there was a week called Hell Week where, they just really, really hard.
Yeah.
And, so that made you more resilient. But then when I had my problems happen and I had the adrenal mercury poisoning, 4 years of starvation, adrenal exhaustion when I was 20, then when I kept pushing myself, I was hurting myself.
Right.
Because I actually didn't have the reserve energy. Yeah. And so for me to not listen to my inner voice saying, don't do that, I learned the hard way. That's not a healthy thing. Yeah. So I'm of the opinion and of the experience that exercise should be a joy.
Yes.
And so you want to condition your mind, your body, your subconscious mind, and your physical body to get to the state where it's a joy to do the physical feat, whatever it is. You're not doing it to win. You're doing it because it's an actual ecstatic state of joy to express your body in this manner.
Right.
Like when I used to sprint, that was just when I was a kid. I'd love to sprint. If I was on the ocean beach and there was a wet ocean shore, it just felt a thrill to run.
Right. And what that does internally at the neurochemical standpoint.
There you go.
Is like what you get the benefit out of that is crazy good. And that's why I know a lot of people are talking about, from a health standpoint, you can do all these exercises, you can do all this. If you're physically fit enough, sprinting short distances does massive wonders for long-term health, longevity.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's not like I'm trying to sprint like I was when I was 18, but it's just getting the body to move at that capacity versus, most of us sit for so long during the day.
Yeah. Well, that's where Luke Corona comes in.
Yeah.
his experience. Like he's 75 now, but he can still, I don't know if he ever did it yet, but he said he's going to try to beat his 21-year-old or high school mile record of 4.5 minutes or so. For him to have the vitality and the cellular joy to want to express his body by running at that speed or that fast, a 4.5 minute mile at 75, that's cellular. That's the way we're designed to be. It's like the body's designed to produce the neurohormones and neurotransmitters and all the chemicals to feel within you the state of happiness and joy,
right?
Without having a reason. It's just a natural state. But because of the mercury poisoning, because of the vaccines, because of the chemtrails, because of the bad diet, we incur, and then mental, emotional insults, we incur beliefs and physiological insults that lead to, failure and to lead to the thoughts that are negative. But, the great work is then to undo that, because you as a soul are a piece of God incarnate in flesh, and God is knows no limits.
Right. Yep.
So God can do, your soul impulse is to have absolute joy, absolute freedom, absolute abundance, and to be of service, to bring joy into other people's lives.
Right. Yep.
And,
nope, I fully agree. And I realize we're well over an hour, and I want to respect your time, Stephen. So thank you so much. I'm going to link your site and everything in the show notes so that people can get to it. But yeah, it's been a great conversation.
Likewise. Blessings.
Thanks for checking out the Confidence Through Health podcast. Please subscribe, post a review, share this episode with those you love who need a little extra help with their health journey. Visit allinhealthandwellness.com to learn more about the coaching programs that I provide. All episodes are produced by the Social Media Cowboys, your source for all online marketing needs. Go to socialmediacowboys.com for more information.